The skies over Earth turned black without warning. Giant ships filled the clouds, blocking the sun. People across the world looked up and froze. No one had ever seen anything like this. The invaders came without a message, without a warning. They simply started to attack. Buildings fell, cities burned, satellites were destroyed in seconds. The sky rained fire. It wasn't a war, it was a slaughter. But Earth was not ready to give up. Captain Laura Kendrick stood inside the control room of the last orbital defense station. Her face was covered in sweat and dirt. She had lost her brother in the first attack. She had no time to cry. She had a job to do. "Power up the railguns," she shouted. Made up of young engineers and old war veterans, moved fast. They knew they didn't have much time. 2 enemy ships were already heading straight for the station. Laura stared at the radar. Her heart beat fast, but her hands were steady. She was ready to die, but not without fighting back. "Target locked," one of the techs said. "Fire." A loud blast shook the station. A glowing rod of metal shot through space. It struck the enemy ship and ripped it in half. Flames burst from the broken ship, and parts of it fell toward Earth. The control room cheered, but Laura didn't smile. "Second ship is moving faster," another tech said. "Reload. Aim again." Outside the station, smaller drones zipped through space like angry wasps. They slammed into the station's walls. Alarms screamed. Sparks flew from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Laura grabbed a helmet and ran to the hangar. She jumped into her fighter jet. Her co-pilot, Nate Harris, was already inside, checking systems. "We're outnumbered," Nate said. "I know," Laura answered. "But if we don't stop them here, Earth is finished." They launched into space. Their jet was small, but fast. Laura twisted through enemy fire, dodging laser blasts. She turned sharply and fired 2 missiles. One hit an enemy drone. The second flew past and hit nothing. "On your left," Nate shouted. Laura turned just in time. A drone was right behind them. Nate opened the rear guns and shot it down. The explosion lit up the dark sky. Back at the station, the railgun fired again. The second enemy ship shook, then broke apart in the middle. Metal and flames floated in space, but it wasn't over. A larger ship, 3 times the size of the last one, appeared in orbit. Its weapons began to glow. "We can't stop that," one of the officers said. Laura didn't believe that. She flew back to the station. "Get every drone, every missile, every last bullet," she ordered. "We hit them with everything." Hundreds of drones launched from the station. Fighter jets rose from hidden bases on Earth. Soldiers armed with old rockets and new tech fired from rooftops and forests. The sky became a war zone. Fire streaked across the stars. Explosions shook the clouds. Pieces of broken ships fell like metal rain. Laura's jet was hit. Smoke filled the cockpit. She fought to keep control. She aimed at the big ship and locked on. "Missile away," she said. The missile hit the main engine. Flames burst out. More jets followed her lead. They fired one after another. The massive ship began to fall, breaking apart as it burned in the atmosphere. People on the ground watched it crash like a dying star. Laura's jet crashed into the ocean. She escaped before it sank. A rescue boat picked her up. She looked back at the sky. It was red and broken, but Earth still stood. And humans were just getting started. The mountains were cold and quiet. Smoke from burned cities still filled the air. Roads were broken, buildings were gone. The world was no longer the same. Deep under the mountains of Colorado, people were still alive. Soldiers, engineers, doctors, and farmers had come together. They built tunnels and bunkers under the rock. They called it the Last Wall. It was Earth's final stronghold. Inside one of the bunkers, a tall woman stood before a group of commanders. Her name was Alina Morgan. She was a former war strategist. She had lost her home, her parents, and her city. She was the leader of what was left. The people called her the Queen. Not because she wore a crown, but because they trusted her. She gave them hope when there was none. At her side stood Rick Dalton. He had been a Navy weapons officer before the skies fell. He was strong, quiet, and full of anger. He lost his wife and son in the first wave. He fought now not for glory, but for payback. Lena looked at the map on the screen. Red marks showed enemy bases around the world. Blue marks were human survivors. "They think we are weak," she said. "They think we will run and hide, but they are wrong. We are not done. Not yet." Rick nodded. "We hit them where they feel safe. We make them fear the dark." A plan was made. Teams would strike small enemy outposts. They would steal weapons, tech, and fuel. They would learn their codes and systems. They would prepare for something bigger, something no one expected. A week later, a team led by Rick moved through the ruins of what was once Chicago. Buildings leaned like broken bones. Fires still burned in the distance. The air was thick with dust. "Stay low," Rick said. With him were 5 soldiers. 2 of them were barely 20. One carried a sniper rifle. The other had explosives in a bag made from a torn parachute. They moved fast, using rubble as cover. They found the enemy outpost near an old stadium. It was guarded by machines and towers, but the machines moved slow. They followed patterns. Rick had studied them for days now, he said. They moved in, silent, fast. A knife cut one guard. A bullet took another. They planted charges on fuel tanks. One of the young soldiers hacked the control panel. The doors opened. Inside were weapons. Things humans had never seen before. Rick took pictures and samples. Then he gave the signal. The bombs went off. Fire filled the sky. The tower exploded, and part of the stadium fell. The team ran. Bullets flew past. One of the soldiers was hit in the leg. Rick carried him on his back. They reached a pickup truck hidden under a highway. It roared to life, and they drove away. Back in the bunker, Alina watched the video Rick had taken. Her eyes were cold, but alive. "This changes everything," she said. They now had proof that the enemy used power sources humans could steal. They knew the machines could be fooled. And they knew that the enemy was not unbeatable. She stood in front of the people that night. Her voice was clear and strong. "We will not live like rats in the ground. We will rise, we'll fight, and we will take back what is ours." The people cheered. Children raised their fists. Soldiers slammed their boots. The fire of war burned again in human hearts. The world was broken, but the humans were not. The Queen had spoken. The war had just begun. Snow fell on the mountain as the training field shook with loud footsteps. Young fighters ran across the frozen ground, their breath sharp in the cold air. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were war-born. Children who had never seen peace. They were raised with guns, not books, taught to fight before they could read. The world had changed, and they had changed with it. Sergeant Megan Hart walked between the rows. She had a scar on her neck and fire in her eyes. Her parents died when she was a child. She had lived in bunkers, hunted for food, and fought in the streets. Now she trained the next generation of soldiers. "Again," she shouted. The warborn moved faster. They fired rifles at targets, rolled across the ground, and climbed over metal walls. Megan watched them without a smile. She was proud, but she did not show it. There was no room for softness. Not now. Later that night, inside the bunker, Megan met with Elena Morgan and Rick Dalton. The Queen had sent for her. She had a special mission. "We have found something," Elena said. Rick placed a metal device on the table. It was a tracking chip from one of the stolen weapons. It showed the location of an enemy flagship. A large ship floating above the ocean, hidden from satellites. "We take that ship," Rick said. "We turn the tide." "It won't be easy," Megan replied. "You don't do easy," Elena said. "You do what others fear." Megan nodded. She picked 15 of her best warborn. Most were between 16 and 20. They were fast, brave, and loyal. They wore black armor with no marks. They moved like shadows. At night, they flew over the ocean in silent gliders. The wind screamed, but the engines were quiet. The enemy ship rose from the waves like a black mountain. It was guarded by towers and drones. Light scanned the water. "Drop now," Megan said. They jumped from the gliders and landed on the metal surface. The sound was light. No alarms went off. Megan used a small cutter to open a hatch. They slipped inside. The halls were cold and full of strange machines. The warborn moved like ghosts. One by one, they took down guards. They used knives, ropes, and silenced weapons. They reached the command room. It was full of screens and controls. Megan planted charges while others hacked into the system. A young fighter named Kyle linked the ship's power to their own signal. "We have it," he said. Suddenly, alarms rang. Red lights flashed. The enemy had noticed. Drones flew toward them. The ship shook with heavy steps. "Hold the room," Megan ordered. Bullets flew. Smoke filled the air. The Warborn fought with everything they had. 2 of them fell. Megan kept firing, reloading with one hand while dragging a wounded boy to cover. Kyle finished the hack.
Ow.
The ship's controls changed to human code. "We own it now," he shouted. "Good," Megan said. "Now get us out." The ship lifted from the water. The enemy tried to stop it, but it was too late. The Warburn had already locked the doors and cut the signal. The stolen ship rose into the sky, moving toward the mountain base. Back in the bunker, people stood and watched the ship land. They cheered. Lena stood on the platform as the Warborn stepped out, bloody but alive. "You did it," she said. Megan nodded. Lena looked at the sky. The enemy thought they ruled space. Now humans had one of their ships, and they were going to use it. The fight was no longer even. Now it was war. The stolen ship hovered above the mountain like a giant bird of steel. Soldiers moved in and out of it, learning every part, every weapon, and every system. Engineers worked day and night. They took the enemy tech and rebuilt it with human hands. What was once a tool of fear now belonged to Earth. Inside the main bunker, Queen Elena stood before a large map. Red lights showed enemy strongholds across the planet. Blue lights showed human groups ready to fight. She pointed to a point near the edge of Saturn. "That is their main base outside Earth," she said. "If we destroy it, they lose control of space." Commander Rick Dalton looked at the map. His jaw was tight. His eyes were sharp. "We used their ship," he said. "We fly straight at them. No more hiding. No more waiting." Elena nodded. "Send everything we have. Ground forces, drones, fighters. We take the war to them." The base came alive. Drones rose from hidden bunkers. Fighters were painted black and silver. Pilots suited up. Soldiers loaded weapons. The stolen ship was now named the Hammer. It would lead the charge. Laura Kendrick stepped onto the deck of a new fighter. It was smaller than the others, but faster. It was called the Starblade. Built from metal taken from enemy wrecks, it could cut through anything. She was the best pilot they had. Megan Hart led a ground team. Her Warborn moved with quiet fire. They had new weapons and new armor. Each of them had lost someone. Each of them wanted to end this war. The fleet rose from Earth like a storm. Stars burned above them. The Hammer moved in front, its guns ready. Rick sat in the command chair. Elena stood behind him. "Keep moving," she said. "Do not stop." As they neared the enemy base, alarms went off. Enemy ships rose from behind the rings of Saturn. Big ones. Fast ones, they opened fire. Lasers lit the sky. Drones exploded in fire. Human ships took damage, but they kept going. The Hammer fired back. Its main cannon tore through 2 enemy ships with one blast. Laura flew ahead. Her Starblade twisted and rolled through the fire. She took out 3 ships in minutes. Her voice came through the radio. "They are fast, but not smart. I see gaps. I'm going in." She dove between enemy cruisers, dropped 2 bombs, and came out without a scratch. The bombs hit a fuel station, and the fire spread fast. Megan and her Warborn dropped from the sky in metal pods. They hit the ground hard and jumped out, firing at once. The enemy base was huge, made of steel and fire, but the Warborn moved like a blade. Every room they entered turned into smoke and dust. Rick gave the order. "Open the gate." The Hammer crashed through the outer wall. Soldiers poured out. They fought with fire in their eyes. They were tired, hurt, and bleeding, but they did not stop. They had come too far to fall now. Lena walked through the battlefield with a rifle in her hand. She shot with calm focus. She moved like a ghost through smoke. She had not left her people behind. She led them. After hours of battle, the enemy base began to break apart. Its towers fell. Its weapons stopped. Its lights went out. Laura flew over it one last time and dropped a final bomb. The blast shook the sky. Humans had one. They did not cheer. They stood in silence, looking at the burning wreck. They had paid a heavy price, but they had taken back the stars. And this was only the beginning. The air smelled of smoke and ash. The enemy base near Saturn had fallen. But the battle was not over. Across the galaxy, more enemy forces were moving. They were angry. They'd never lost like this before. They sent everything they had toward Earth. Huge ships, dark weapons, new machines. The sky would burn again. But the humans were ready. Queen Alina stood on the bridge of the hammer. Her armor was cracked, and her face had a long cut across her cheek, but her eyes were sharp. She looked at the screen. Hundreds of red dots were moving toward Earth. "They want to end this," she said. "So we end it first." Commander Rick Dalton stood beside her. His left arm was wrapped in bandages. He had not slept in 2 days. "We strike now," he said. "We hit them before they reach us. We take the fight to their last stronghold." Alina nodded. "Is our last push." Back on Earth, soldiers gathered across the mountains and deserts. Pilots sat in their fighters. Ground troops loaded tanks and cannons. Megan Hart stood with her Warbird, checking their gear one last time. She said nothing. Her face was cold, her heart was ready. Laura Kendrick flew high above them in the Starblade. She checked her controls, then looked up at the stars. "Let's finish this," she whispered. The hammer and the fleet launched again. This time there was no fear, only purpose. Earth had been attacked, burned and broken, but not defeated. Now it would rise. They reached the enemy's final base, built into a dead moon near Jupiter. It was massive, dark, and armed with every kind of weapon. As the fleet came close, it opened fire. Missiles and lasers filled space. 2 human ships exploded in seconds. The hammer was hit on its left side. Flames burst out, but the ship kept moving. "Hold course," Alina ordered. Laura flew through the fire like a bolt of lightning. She shot down 2 defense towers and cleared a path for the others. Megan and her Warborn dropped again, this time into the heart of the base. They fought in tight halls, corner by corner. Smoke covered everything. Bodies hit the floor. The Warborn did not stop. It lost too much. They were not afraid to die. Rick led a team of heavy gunners through the outer wall. He kicked down doors and used his shotgun at close range. Got hit in the side but kept walking. Inside the control room, the enemy leaders tried to escape, but Alina reached them first. She stood tall, rifle in hand, her armor burned, and her voice strong. "This is for Earth," she said. She pulled the trigger. The battle raged for another hour. Then the last enemy cannon fell silent. The base was on fire. The moon shook. Humans had done the impossible. The enemy fleet turned and tried to run, but they were hunted. One by one, they were taken down. The sky was filled with fire. When the last ship fell, Earth was quiet. Back on the planet, people walked out of bunkers. They looked at the sky and saw no more ships. They saw stars. Real stars? Clean sky? No more smoke? Lena returned to Earth in the hammer. She walked through the crowd. Children ran to her. Soldiers saluted. Farmers cried. The Queen had brought them victory. She stood on a broken wall and raised her hand. "We are free," she said. They cheered. Not because the war was over, but because they had won it together. The world was scarred. Cities were gone. Graves were full, but humanity stood tall. They were no longer the hunted. They were the legends. And the stars now belonged to them.